The 2025 NFL Draft was expected to be Shedeur Sanders' moment. Many projected him as a top 10 talent and a headline quarterback in one of the most discussed college football storylines in years. Instead of walking across the stage on the first night, he waited through 3 days without a call. There was no celebration, only silence. When the phone finally rang at pick no. 144 in the 5th round, it was the Cleveland Browns. With that selection, the financial outlook changed dramatically. The Sanders family believes this was not a typical draft slide, but the result of coordinated action. They are pursuing a $100 million lawsuit alleging collusion across parts of the league. In the months before the draft, Sanders was consistently discussed among the top quarterbacks in the class. Television and digital analysts praised his poise, accuracy, leadership, and command. Scouts highlighted a 74.1% completion rate, record-setting stretches at Colorado, and his rise from an HBCU star to a national figure. Consensus expectations placed him in the first round or early second. Draft night unfolded differently. As picks accumulated, there was little indication that his name would be called. The atmosphere at his private gathering shifted from anticipation to doubt. When the Browns selected him late on day 3, projections for his first contract dropped from an estimated range in the mid-$30 million to approximately $4.6 million, with corresponding reductions in likely endorsements and long-term positioning. According to Deion Sanders and others close to the family, this was not about performance, injury, or conduct. They argue it was coordinated. Attorneys were contacted immediately. The allegation is straightforward. Sanders' value was suppressed intentionally. The family's position is that this was a calculated decision within parts of the league, not an isolated set of evaluations. The legal claims focus on communications that, if authenticated, could be significant. Internal emails, text messages, and owner-to-owner conversations. The family's representatives contend that these materials show a deliberate effort to avoid drafting Sanders in early rounds based on perceived image concerns rather than football merit. One message reportedly under review framed the decision in branding terms. Drafting Shedeur would mean inheriting the Prime brand. The complaint asserts that this view led some teams to discourage others from selecting him unless necessary, not for film-based reasons, but to avoid perceived attention and external pressure tied to his family's profile. A related thread involves speculation about team fit and willingness to play for certain franchises. Past public comments by Deion Sanders were interpreted by some as signals of an Eli Manning scenario. The family's view is that these were strategic statements, not ultimatums. They argue that rather than engage in discussion, teams chose a passive approach, no direct rebuttal, reduced contact, and a collective reluctance to invest a premium pick. If phone records and written communications corroborate coordination, these items could become central exhibits. Media tone shifted as the draft neared. Coverage that had emphasized production and leadership began highlighting intangibles, interviews, and perceived coachability. Anonymous sourcing appeared in multiple outlets, with claims that Sanders skipped combine drills out of arrogance, bristled at film critique, or told one club, "Maybe I'm not the guy for you," after a tense session. A widely cited line, "Nobody wants a celebrity backup quarterback," was voiced by Colin Cowherd and circulated as shorthand for risk. The Sanders legal position is that these narratives did not arise organically, but reflected a coordinated leak pattern that undermined his market value. The family's contention is that this was primarily about control and compliance rather than football ability. They point out that Sanders did not fail a drug test, was not suspended, and did not produce poor athletic testing. His college resume included elite stretches and significant program elevation at 2 stops. The legal claim asserts that the league's power structure resisted a high-profile player aligned with a high-profile parent coach and an independent media presence. The allegation is that teams sought to avoid the perceived complexity that would come with selecting him early. The financial impact is a core component of the damages claim. Had Sanders been selected late first or early second round, projected 4-year compensation would likely have fallen between $30 to $35 million, with immediate access to higher tier endorsement opportunities and the brand leverage that accompanies a franchise quarterback designation. As a 5th round pick, the initial contract value is a fraction of that total, and associated off-field opportunities are typically narrower. The suit reportedly seeks not only lost salary, but also the broader economic value linked to draft position, sponsorships, licensing, and the visibility that accelerates an early career trajectory. The filing's scope, as described by sources close to the family, extends beyond the league office. It may involve media outlets, scouting firms, and specific executives if discovery shows coordination or materially false statements that affected value. The argument is that the draft slide harmed not only Shedeur, but also the broader Sanders brand, affecting perceptions of Deion Sanders as a recruiter, coach, and public figure. The family's view is that narrative construction around brand risk and celebrity backup produced a measurable economic and reputational loss. If a court authorizes discovery, the process would likely compel emails, internal draft notes, and message archives from teams and third-party intermediaries. Subpoenas could be served on media organizations for sourcing records related to anonymous quotes. That level of transparency would be unusual and could reveal how information flows during pre-draft periods. The legal theory moves beyond a single player's evaluation to the draft's integrity, whether owners or executives acted in concert to reduce a prospect's value for reasons unrelated to football performance. The league has not publicly addressed these specific allegations. Background comments from executives characterize the claims as overreach. The family's camp maintains they have documentation sufficient to proceed. The comparison points referenced by observers include Deflategate, Spygate, and the Colin Kaepernick grievance, not because the facts are the same, but because of the potential scope, policies, practices, and the balance of power between the league and individuals challenging its processes. Another dimension of the dispute involves how the NFL perceives Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and the autonomy he promotes. He built a large media footprint around his programs at Jackson State and Colorado, elevated his players' profiles, and spoke openly about fit and leverage. The family contends that this visibility, combined with statements about preferred destinations, triggered resistance. The complaint frames the response as a preference for compliance and predictability over independent branding and public negotiation. The suit also addresses the pre-draft decisions that critics point to: skipping the Senior Bowl, declining full workouts at the NFL Scouting Combine, and candid interviews about team fits. The family characterizes these as strategic choices commonly made by top prospects, not evidence of entitlement. Their view is that similar decisions by other players did not produce the same narrative because those players fit more comfortably within league expectations. The risk calculus is clear. Bringing a suit of this magnitude invites professional consequences. The family acknowledges that some within the league may react negatively. Their position is that the principle at stake, transparent and fair valuation, warrants the risk. The message they intend to send is that manufactured narratives and coordinated devaluation should face scrutiny, particularly when they affect earnings, opportunity, and reputation. If the case advances, several outcomes are possible. The court could find insufficient evidence of coordination, limiting the scope to individual judgments protected as opinion. It could also find enough to proceed to broader discovery, which would have implications beyond one player, including potential changes to how teams document evaluations and how media handle anonymous sourcing close to the draft. Agents might push for reforms, including clearer guardrails around leaks and standardized prospect communication records. For now, Sanders is working within the Browns structure. He has avoided public escalation beyond confirming focus on preparation and development. The lawsuit is a separate track managed by counsel. This dual approach, professional routine on the field and legal action off it, reflects the family's strategy. They intend to contest the process they believe harmed him while meeting club expectations day to day. The core allegations remain consistent across their statements. A talented quarterback saw his draft value suppressed by coordinated behavior tied to branding concerns and public positioning rather than football merit. Media narratives amplified that shift, and the result was a substantial, quantifiable loss. The remedy sought includes compensation and a measure of accountability that could deter similar conduct. Whether the claims are ultimately proven will depend on documentation and testimony. If emails, texts, and call logs substantiate coordination, the impact could be significant, prompting policy review around pre-draft communications and media engagement. If not, the case may narrow to disputes over opinion, perception, and the gray areas of scouting. Either way, the filing signals a willingness to confront entrenched practices and to test in court how far the process extends beyond film and interviews. This situation has moved from speculation to litigation. It addresses control, image, and power in a system that influences careers and compensation. It also underscores how public narratives can shape market outcomes. Sanders' path now has two tracks: earning opportunities on the field in Cleveland and seeking redress off the field for what the family views as an avoidable and orchestrated loss. The questions at stake are larger than one draft slot. They touch on how the league values independence, how information is weaponized, and what recourse exists when a player believes the evaluation moved from football to optics. The answers will emerge through practice reps and, potentially, through discovery and a courtroom record.
You made an interesting point. So, I tend to have the drip, drip, drip. This was my Johnny Manziel theory, is that everybody makes mistakes, especially when you're young. But if I see 2, 3, 4, 5, then you've got a plumbing issue. It's not just you didn't close the faucet. So there's about 6 pieces of video in college where Shedeur was a little bit of a brat, whatever. Then there's the legendary cringy draft room. Didn't love that as a B prospect. Then there's back-to-back speeding tickets, both over 90, and a missed arraignment.
The NFL is navigating unexpected headlines after a former Browns coach publicly defended Shedeur Sanders in response to reports of multiple speeding tickets. The coach's statement has sparked extensive online debate. Supporters welcome the show of loyalty, while critics question the motive. Sanders now finds himself at the center of an unforeseen controversy, and observers want to know why a Cleveland coach is standing so firmly in his corner. The story is developing rapidly and continues to draw intense attention.
When it came out that he got a speeding ticket, I said it's not really that big a deal. I feel very differently about it now. Over 40 miles an hour over the speed limit, less than 2 weeks after you just got a ticket. I don't know if that's entitlement or immaturity. There's got to be some teams that are feeling very good right now that they didn't draft him.
Observers are focusing on Shedeur Sanders' recent speeding ticket, treating the violation as a measure of his character and sidelining his athletic, academic, and philanthropic accomplishments. The incident, driving 15 miles per hour over the limit in a borrowed Lamborghini, has drawn sharp criticism. In response, a former Cleveland Browns coach has taken the opportunity to comment, even though the franchise is widely viewed as unstable due to its frequent coaching changes and limited on-field success. By defending Sanders, he presents himself as an authority on discipline and leadership. The statement, coming from an organization seldom praised for stability, has nonetheless attracted considerable attention across the league.
You want to defend him a little bit. I thought this was an interesting take.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that you said you were out because of the speeding tickets. To me, that's such a minor thing. You were so high on him in terms of his completion percentage in OTAs, and I thought that was a little aggressive on your part. But with the speeding tickets, I got a speeding ticket the first night of the draft, my first year there. I thought maybe I'd get the benefit of the doubt, but they gave it to me anyways.
As soon as the former Browns coach defended Shedeur Sanders, social media erupted with commentary, resembling the volume of draft night coverage. Posts and opinions appeared within minutes, and criticism escalated rapidly. Detractors amplified Sanders' minor speeding violation, while supporters argued that such reactions were disproportionate to a single traffic citation. Shedeur Sanders received 2 speeding citations, and the minor traffic issue quickly drew national attention. Before considering the former Browns coach's response, it is useful to clarify the facts. Sanders, son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders and a current college quarterback, was twice ticketed for exceeding the limit while driving a high-performance vehicle. Commentary on social media escalated rapidly, with critics framing the incident as a significant character concern, even as the league has historically tolerated far more serious legal transgressions. Stepping into the debate, a former Cleveland Browns coach, best known for a tenure filled with losses and contested decisions, issued a strong public defense. He argued that 2 speeding tickets should not define Sanders' reputation or overshadow his on-field talent and community work, urging a balanced assessment of the player's actions.
I don't love it from a 5th-round draft pick. I don't love that it happened multiple times, but I do think that this is the first time he's been away from his dad, and there's gonna be some growing pains now. Would I sell my stock on it like you are? Not because of a couple speeding tickets, especially in light of the problems that Brown's quarterback room has had to deal with legally in the last few years. I mean, this is This is nothing.
The debate quickly shifted from 2 speeding citations to broader claims about integrity, growth, and leadership. The former Browns coach framed the infractions as moments for personal development and urged observers to view them in context. Critics responded forcefully. Some called for disciplinary action, others questioned Deion Sanders' parenting, and a few sought to discredit the coach himself, despite his professional record already being widely analyzed across the league. The reaction underscores an apparent inconsistency in public standards. Fans often overlook on-field confrontations, heated sideline arguments, and other significant controversies, yet they treated Sanders' routine traffic offenses, speeding without evidence of reckless endangerment, as indicators of serious character flaws. If such minor violations were adopted as the primary measure of morality in professional football, many players would face similar criticism. Sports media amplified the story almost immediately. Television panels dissected Shedeur Sanders' decision-making, treating 2 speeding tickets as indicators of deeper character concerns. Networks aired detailed segments under banners such as red flags and road rage, repeatedly questioning whether the citations might affect his draft evaluation. Although Sanders is already regarded as a first-round prospect, analysts emphasize that NFL teams value discipline and legal awareness when forming final assessments. Many commentators overlook the fact that other high-profile players have faced more serious offenses without similar scrutiny. Throughout the coverage, the former Browns coach defended Sanders, portraying him as a talented quarterback subjected to disproportionate criticism in a culture that expects near-perfect conduct. His argument was thorough and methodical, asserting that the traffic violation should not overshadow Sanders' skills, work ethic, or future potential. Commentators point out that the coach's intervention was not entirely selfless. He recognized the publicity potential. One day he was an overlooked figure from a struggling Browns era, the next he was a trending name across sports media. The discussion quickly expanded beyond Sanders' speeding citations to questions of image management and narrative control. Critics demanded disciplinary measures, public apologies, team sanctions, and formal statements, yet their objections seemed directed less at the traffic infractions themselves and more at Sanders' high profile, confidence, and resistance to traditional expectations. In practical terms, Sanders' brand remains intact. The coach secures renewed relevance, and the episode supplies another headline in the ongoing story of modern football. The next time Sanders is seen in a high-performance car, the debate will likely reignite, focused not on speed limits, but on the broader culture of the league. Meanwhile, new voices continue to join the conversation. Broadcaster Colin Cowherd has already weighed in, offering his own reassessment of the incident and its broader implications.
Breaking news, Shedeur Sanders last night was pulled over going 100 miles per hour. All right, he clocked 101, 41 miles an hour over the speed limit in Cleveland. He will have the opportunity to fight the ticket in court. Now, I'm not exactly sure where he was pulled over, whether or not that it was in Ohio or whether or not that it was in his home state. But typically when you're going 40 over, that's flirting with the line of reckless driving. Folks, I gotta tell you, I don't understand what it is with these young men driving at absurd speed.
Colin Cowherd's view of Shedeur Sanders shifted abruptly. Days after praising the quarterback's poise and skill, he appeared on air to declare that Sanders is overhyped, unfocused, and distracted by celebrity. The reversal was immediate, without any gradual reconsideration. Cowherd now frames Sanders' 2 speeding tickets as evidence of poor judgment, even though he has defended other quarterbacks facing far more serious off-field issues. The sudden, wholesale withdrawal of support leaves viewers questioning the consistency of Cowherd's criteria and illustrates how quickly media narratives can change when minor incidents receive outsized attention.
This is
Okay.
nothing.
Okay. How much of this is, Jimmy Haslam has his hands all over Manziel, has his hands all over Deshaun Watson, admitted it, man enough to admit it. I saw the reaction in the draft room when they took Shedeur Sanders. Pretty obvious it wasn't the coach and the GM's pick. How much is this team has 8 last place finishes in 13 years owning it. How much of this is we don't have a very good owner here like Washington, D.C. and the Commanders?
Yeah, I didn't love the owner stepping in and saying, hey, you got to take this guy in the 5th round. And I doubt they'll ever admit to it.
While Colin Cowherd urged teams to move on from Shedeur Sanders, former Browns coach Eric Mangini offered a more measured response. Mangini, whose tenure in Cleveland was marked by mixed results, used his platform to provide context rather than condemnation. Instead of sensationalizing the speeding violations, he encouraged viewers to consider Sanders' circumstances. A 21-year-old quarterback whose life is scrutinized both on and off the field. Mangini acknowledged that the tickets were mistakes, but emphasized that they do not by themselves define Sanders' character character or future. He noted the extraordinary attention athletes receive today, combining the responsibilities of quarterback, public figure, and social media presence. Under such pressure, missteps are magnified, and criticism multiplies quickly. Mangini concluded that any evaluation of Sanders should weigh the totality of his behavior, performance, and growth, rather than isolate 2 traffic citations as decisive evidence of poor judgment.
What do you think is happening in Browns camp? What do you think is going to happen there? Before I let you go, Lewis.
You know, I think it really does all depend on how Kevin is able to, as it relates to Shedeur, work him in enough. Well, one, Shedeur has to earn the right for Kevin and the staff to have discussions about, hey, we got to get him more reps with the 1s and 2s. We got to get him more reps with the 1s and 2s when we're going team period, not just walk through or not just 7-on-7 team.
Louis Riddick reacted sharply on air after viewing practice footage from the Cleveland Browns. The clip showed quarterback Shedeur Sanders executing a string of precise throws while the Browns head coach watched with a broad smile. Riddick questioned whether the session was focused on evaluation or celebration, arguing that visible enthusiasm from the staff could cloud objective assessment of a rookie's progress. Earlier in the segment, Riddick's tone had been measured once the Sanders highlights appeared. He criticized the perception that a routine practice was being treated like a marquee event. He stressed that coaching reactions should remain subdued until performance translates into game situations. Riddick concluded by calling for accountability and asking the Browns to clarify how they plan to manage expectations for Shedeur Sanders as training camp continues.
Couldn't imagine me myself saying, hey, you know what, as someone who has been at the very bottom to try and ascend to like some level of success, I could never imagine going, you know what would be really cool? I'm gonna play a joke on someone like this and pretend that I'm a GM and I'm drafting you when actually I'm not, and then I'm gonna hang up and just giggle about it. Man, what the hell are we doing? Seriously, what are we doing when we think that kind of crap is funny?
I don't know. Trying to get likes on TikTok.
I don't have the right words for it.
Right, Lewis, I'm gonna say this.
I don't have the right words for it.
Few situations unsettle a former front office executive faster than watching coaches celebrate a rookie quarterback before pads come on in August. In Louis Riddick's view, the Browns staff did more than acknowledge promise. They acted as though they had already secured their franchise leader. Throughout the session, Shedeur Sanders delivered 40-yard throws off his back foot, ran crisp 2-minute drills, and displayed steadiness rare for a first-year player. According to reports, each successful rep drew audible admiration from the sideline, highlighting how quickly enthusiasm has escalated. When Riddick reviewed the same practice tape and heard the glowing comments, he challenged the reaction on live television. He argued that a few controlled drills should not override the methodical scouting and development work that normally guides roster decisions. Riddick's criticism focused less on Sanders' talent than on the evaluation process. He warned that comparing a prospect to established stars or joking about renaming the stadium creates pressure before the player has taken an NFL hit, faced a disguised coverage, or logged a preseason snap. Praising potential is acceptable, he said, but anointing a savior in July risks repeating the organization's history of premature quarterback expectations. Sanders brings confidence shaped by his father's legacy and his own disciplined preparation, yet Riddick insists that progress must be confirmed over time. He urged the Browns to temper public excitement, follow a structured development plan, and reserve celebratory reactions for on-field results that matter. Regular season production under live pressure, not highlight clips from a midsummer workout.
He has to earn that. Kevin has to figure out a way to do that. So then you can reasonably assess what you have in him compared to Dylan Gabriel, compared to Kenny, compared to Joe Flacco. If you don't, then the conversation surrounding him is going to continue to be what it's been, which is, but for some people, he was overhyped all along. He's not that great of an athlete, doesn't have a big enough arm. There's a reason why he was a 5th-round pick, blah, 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 which I don't believe. I believe if he is given enough reps, earns enough reps, and then is given enough reps in meaningful situations, He can throw the ball just as good as Joe, if not better, just as good as Kenny, if not better, just as good as Dillon Gabriel.
After more than 2 decades in personnel and broadcast analysis, Louis Riddick was dismayed to see a franchise bypass basic evaluation standards after only a series of eye-catching minicamp throws. Reviewing practice footage from Cleveland, he observed Shedeur Sanders drilling 40-yard passes against uncovered receivers and running 2-minute sequences with poise. In Riddick's view, those reps, conducted without pads, contact, or a disguised rush, show arm talent but reveal little about how a rookie handles game pressure. Riddick said the Browns' reaction drifted from objective assessment to outright admiration. Multiple reports indicated coaches were sketching new concepts for Sanders during dinner and referring to dedicated Shedeur packages well before a padded practice. Even the veterans in the quarterback room showed no visible alarm, a sign that staff excitement had already reset the internal depth chart conversation. The analyst emphasized that his concern is not Sanders' skill set. He acknowledged the quarterback's arm strength, footwork, and composure, but rather how quickly the club appears willing to declare him its long-term answer. Riddick cited several past prospects who received similar midsummer acclaim only to stall once real competition began. Given Cleveland's long history of quarterback turnover, he argued the organization should focus on incremental milestones, processing post-snap reads, surviving live pass rushes, and rebounding from mistakes on Sunday afternoons. Riddick urged the Browns to temper expectations and follow a structured development plan so Shedeur Sanders can progress without undue pressure. One coach reportedly admitted he replayed Tuesday's scrimmage film so often that he lost sleep, an anecdote Riddick offered as proof that enthusiasm is already outpacing reality.
All asking now is what is going on with Shedeur Sanders, and so the floor is yours. Maybe you can make sense of this free fall with what was at one point the top-rated quarterback in this draft class.
Yeah, see, I think at this point in time, this really isn't a football discussion any longer. This is a personal discussion. This is about it's a fit discussion. It's whether or not teams are just comfortable with everything that comes along with Shedeur in terms of who he is as a person, all the people that are surrounding him in terms of his inner circle, and whether or not teams deem that to be something that they're comfortable with. Right or wrong, that's the only conclusion you can really come to at this point.
Louis Riddick voiced an escalating concern during the segment. Having witnessed numerous quarterback setbacks in his career, he worries another may be forming, not because Shedeur Sanders lacks talent, but because the praise around him is growing without restraint. Sanders has simply attended practice, delivered accurate passes, led the huddle, and shown the composure expected of an NFL player. Riddick fears the Browns' reaction, treating routine drills as proof of long-term success, risks setting premature expectations. He cautioned that the organization seems ready to celebrate a franchise savior before Sanders has taken a competitive snap, noting that such early adulation has derailed promising prospects in the past and could impede Sanders' measured development. Chris Carter's televised assessment of Shedeur Sanders triggered immediate pushback from Cleveland fans, local media, and even several Browns veterans. Carter dismissed Sanders, a 5th-round pick, as unprepared to start and framed the growing interest around him as purely a byproduct of surname recognition. Since that segment aired, practice reports have told a very different story. Observers inside the Browns facility describe a rookie quarterback who is closing the gap on Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel with surprising speed. Sanders first turned heads in rookie minicamp by directing the huddle with a calm that belied his inexperience. Position coaches reported that he rarely repeated mental errors during installation periods, a trait they rank highly when grading young quarterbacks. In organized team activities, he showed consistent timing on intermediate routes, kept turnover numbers low in 7-on-7 periods, and demonstrated early command of Kevin Stefanski's protection calls. That steady execution earned him a handful of first-team snaps, reps that would ordinarily have belonged to Pickett by default. By mandatory minicamp, the rotation had shifted again. Practice notes from beat reporters detail the rise in Sanders' workload each day. Red zone series against the starting defense, 2-minute drills, and full field scrimmage possessions in which he checked out of called plays when fronts dictated it. Mary Kay Cabot, initially skeptical Sanders would challenge for game day snaps in 2025, wrote after consecutive sessions in mid-June that his footwork, release speed, and pocket management had, quote, meaningfully tightened since rookie camp. Her tone marked a clear departure from early spring projections that labeled Sanders a long-term developmental project. The broader quarterback context in Cleveland magnifies that progress. Deshaun Watson's availability and form remain uncertain after 2 injury-interrupted seasons, while Pickett's transition from Pittsburgh has been uneven. Dillon Gabriel's arm strength is evident, but coaches continue to stress hesitation in his full-field reads. Against that backdrop, Sanders' quick decision-making and mechanical efficiency have begun to look less like a pleasant surprise and more like the roster's most reliable short-term plan. Inside the locker room, acceptance has followed performance. Wide receivers cite Sanders' ball placement on outbreaking routes, noting that the ball routinely arrives on the upfield shoulder, a small but essential detail that allows for yards after the catch. Offensive linemen appreciate his pocket awareness. Joel Bitonio remarked privately that Sanders slides up instead of bailing when edge pressure flashes. Defensive backs say his eye discipline forces them to hold coverage longer than they expected against a rookie. Such cross-positional respect develops only when day-to-day tape shows tangible improvement. The reaction to Carter's critique highlights a recurring double standard applied to young black quarterbacks. Traits celebrated as swagger or confidence in other players were labeled arrogance when associated with Sanders, yet the quarterback himself has not responded publicly. There have been no subtle social media jabs, no mention of critics in interviews, only repeated references to competing for every rep and learning from veterans. That measured approach, combined with hard evidence from practice, has softened earlier doubts among coaches who prioritize demeanor as much as arm talent. Within the coaching staff, the discussion now centers on readiness thresholds. Stefanski's scheme relies heavily on quick rhythm throws, defined reads, and disciplined pocket movement. Those requirements align with Sanders' strengths: a compact release, willingness to target the middle of the field, and instinctive timing on RPO concepts carried over from his college tape. Staffers reviewing cut-ups from joint practices note that his internal clock already approximates NFL speed, a metric they did not expect to see until mid-season at best. If that trajectory continues through preseason games, the Browns face a consequential decision. Starting a 5th-round rookie 6 weeks after training camp opens would unsettle salary cap assumptions, depth chart politics, and external perceptions of organizational stability. Yet the internal mandate remains clear: the most prepared quarterback will play. That standard places Sanders in genuine contention because every practice metric used to grade readiness, turnover ratio, red zone efficiency, third down conversion rate has trended in his favor since early June. The organizational stakes are considerable. Cleveland has cycled through starting quarterbacks at a startling pace over the past decade, shifting from first-round investments like Baker Mayfield to high-cost gambles such as Watson, each move packaged as the long-awaited solution. A rookie chosen outside the first 100 picks ascending to the top of the depth chart would challenge long-held league assumptions about draft pedigree and opportunity. It would also validate the evaluation philosophy that prioritized Sanders' intangibles: processing speed, leadership presence, over conventional arm strength thresholds that pushed him down the draft board. Carter's televised remarks now sit awkwardly alongside daily updates from Berea. His critique relied on pre-draft labels and the presumption that a late-round passer with a famous father would need a redshirt year. Practice film contradicts that stance. Sanders checks protections at the line, manipulates safeties with shoulder fakes, and has reduced turnover-worthy throws and full-speed sessions to single digits. Statistics normally cited for veteran backups, not rookies. The longer that evidence accumulates, the more Carter's comments appear rooted in legacy bias rather than objective performance review. None of this guarantees Sanders will open the season under center. Preseason defenses test quarterbacks in ways practice cannot. Defensive coordinators will disguise pressure and boundary rotation to force late decisions. Sanders must show he can adjust protections and exploit mismatches without the benefit of a controlled environment. Yet within the Browns facility, the conversation has shifted from if he will be ready to when. Quiet confidence from Amari Cooper and other veterans suggests they believe Sanders can steady an offense searching for consistency more than highlight reel heroics. Sanders' rise also affects long-term roster calculus. If he earns the job and performs competently, Cleveland gains starter-level production on a cost-controlled rookie contract, freeing cap space allocated to other positions. That scenario could reshape roster-building strategy in a division featuring Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, quarterbacks whose contracts consume significant percentages of team payroll. A capable, low-cost starter would allow the Browns to reinforce their offensive line and secondary while retaining core veterans, a competitive advantage few teams enjoy. For now, the focal point remains daily improvement. Sanders continues to arrive before sunrise, reviewing the previous day's install with the quarterback coach, then staying after practice to throw on-air routes with receivers low on the depth chart. Coaches track those habits closely because consistent routine underpins performance when adversity strikes in live games. Each incremental gain strengthens the argument that readiness depends on preparation and aptitude, not draft slot. Carter's segment reminded the league how quickly assessments can become outdated when they lean on perception over evidence. Sanders' steady climb up the depth chart underscores the counterpoint. In the NFL, tape is the final arbiter. Should Sanders translate practice efficiency to preseason success, the Browns may discover that the solution to their long-standing quarterback riddle arrived quietly in the 5th round, carrying little more than confidence and a willingness to work.